con nosotros en Casa a la Carta tenemos un chef que nos trae los sabores de Europa. Justamente está Timo Kresse, que es el gerente de desarrollo y de proyectos de la empresa HWA, y nos va a comentar un poco cómo está trabajando la empresa HWA con relación a la contaminación, que están llevando a cabo para tratar de ir reduciéndola. Timo Kresse, Edgardo Berg from Carta a la Carta greets you. How are you?
Thank you, very well.
Timo, first, what does the acronym ZEDU, ZEDU1, stand for?
The acronym ZEDU1 stands for Zero Emission Drive Unit Generation 1, which means that it is a device to help reducing the emissions from passenger cars in the future.
Which part of the car does this project focus to?
Normally, if you speak about zero emissions in passenger cars, you are always talking about the powertrain. But this project in particular does not work on reducing powertrain emissions. It works on reducing emissions from brakes and from tires, which both contribute highly to particle emissions from passenger cars.
And who is HWA working with in this project?
HWA is working in this project together with the company called DLR. It's a German acronym, and it's a company or a research institute in Germany. They normally doing research on aeronautics and space missions and things like that. But they also have institutes for vehicle technology, which is in particular based near Stuttgart, near our headquarters. So it was a good collaboration to work with like industry and research institute together on this project.
It's very interesting how the car automobile industry gathers with the aerospace industry to deal with this problem of pollution. And I agree with you, people think about what fossil fuels produce in terms of pollution, but not about brakes and other parts of the car.
Yeah, and this is very important because the emissions from the powertrains are already on a very good level and always improving. And in Europe, we are heading towards a new regulations from the governments, which is called Euro 7 emission level, which will be very, very strict for all combustion engines. So the emissions will be very, very low. But at the same time, the brakes and the tires are still, let's say, especially on the particle emissions, contributing highly to the pollution we have, especially in the inner cities. That is, we have a very famous place in Stuttgart, which is known in Germany for being very high polluted with particles. And therefore, this is like a coincidence that we in Stuttgart did this project.
Well, in a way, Stuttgart is like one of the cradles of the automobile all around the world. You talk about Stuttgart and you start thinking about cars.
That's true, and that's where we are coming from, because HWA is originally founded by Mr. Aufrecht, who is basically one of the founders of AMG, Mercedes-AMG. So Mr. Aufrecht is the A of AMG and as well the A of HWA. And our direct neighbors are AMG, and we are close to Stuttgart. And as you say, lots of companies like Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, and lots of tier 1 suppliers are in that region. And that's why it's especially interesting for us to do this project. And there is great interest from not only OEMs, but as well the tier 1 suppliers to dig a bit deeper into that project and know it and maybe work on it in the future. Because what you have to know is that there are the legislation in Europe, they will most probably introduce regulations for brake particle emissions as well. So there could be in the future some pressure on the industry to develop something for the road cars.
So in a way, you are trying to anticipate those regulations for the future.
Yeah, anticipate the regulations, yes. And as we are coming originally from motorsports, and in motorsports you always try to think one step ahead because you want to be better than the competitor. And we try to take this thinking into road car products and think what could be a product that is helping the emission levels of cars in not in 2 years, not in 3 years, but maybe in 5 to 10 years. And that was the approach here, to develop something that as a concept that could be in mass production maybe in 5 years.
And going to the project in itself, how does it work with brakes? And you mentioned tires, so both, in a way, you are dealing with the two parts of the car which are not seen as polluting parts.
So we are developing this system for an electric car, which means that you can, during braking, regenerate brake energy with the e-motor into the battery. So you don't need to have that much mechanical brake in the car. Due to this fact, we are able to take, normally you have a disc brake in your car, it's in the wheel, but in this car we take it completely off. And we put the mechanical brake into the inner part of the car. And we have it, the brake discs, we have several brake discs per side. We have them in the gearbox that is attached to the e-motor. And this in combination gives one compact unit, which is one part of the zero emission drive unit. And it is completely closed. So the cooling of the brakes works with a fluid. And the fluid itself, it's an oil, and it's at the same time the lubricant for the gearbox. And that brake is basically nothing new. It's a clutch system, which you normally know from dual clutch gearboxes. But the working principle is the other way around. You don't accelerate the car, you'll break it down. But anyway, it's nearly the same, just the other way around. And with this system, so the very compact e-motor attached directly a gearbox, and in the gearbox the brake system, cooled with a fluid, that as well takes all the particles that are coming from the wear on the discs during braking. And then you have all the particles in the fluid, and the fluid has a filter. And then you collect every dust particles, every wear particles in the filter, and then you can exchange it in a normal car workshop and put it into a closed loop recycling system. And that's why you don't have any more emissions from brake particles into the environment during driving. And this is really a massive step, because it's from 100% to 0%. And it's really zero. There's no discussion. The principle itself only gives zero emissions.
really how you change the vision about the gearbox with the brakes next to the gearbox and how to use the lubricant is something fantastic. It's sort of lateral thinking about this problem.
Yeah, it's we originally had this idea for a racing car, but it was almost immediately clear that it's as well something for a road car. Mm-hmm. And for sure there are now some things that we need to develop, that we need to add on the system, like for example an ABS system. Mm-hmm. This is in the current concept not there, because we focused on reducing the emissions and prove that this system works for emission reduction. Mm. And now the second step, and there might be a ZEDU 2 project, hopefully in the future, we can add on all the other necessary elements that are working, that is already proven. It's working as well with that concept, but we have to develop it and to adapt it for this type of braking.
Mm-hmm. And you, yes, go on, please.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, and you were asking as well about the tires, yes. And that's now the interesting thing, and why the second part of the system with the tires is strongly dependent from that first system. Mm-hmm. Because as I said before, we took out the normal disc brake from the wheel, mm-hmm. and the normal disc brake requires an air mass flow to cool it when you're braking, because there's heat in the tire when you brake, and that must go out. So if you don't have the disc brake in the wheel anymore, you don't need the ventilation through the rim. And that's why we are able to cover the whole wheel, mm-hmm. And to create a system that after the point where the contact point between tire and road, after that contact point, you'll have like a housing and a ventilation system that takes in not all, but most of the particles that are coming from that contact point during driving. Mm-hmm. So we are not like getting rid of that particles, because they are created because you need to have the contact to the road. But after they come up, they are directly collected into that housing of the wheel, and then into a filter and ventilation system, which is under the bonnet of the car. And the clean air is then like extracted over the bonnet out of the car. And the measurement shows that most of the very lightweight airborne particles can be collected around about 70%. So it's not 100% reduction, but it's also a good step in terms of tire wear particles.
Oh, you are talking about the brake system, you are talking about the tires. And taking out from the powertrain, are there any other parts of the car which are polluting parts, or those are the main part of the car that produce pollution?
Yeah, that are the main parts. Mm-hmm. If you talk about driving the car, we're not focusing on production methods and things like that. Mm-hmm. But if you're talking about the car when you drive it, then the powertrain, the brakes, and the tires are contributing the most to particle emissions.
Well, really, I'm very happy because you are dealing with a real problem that, not for example, for our city, Mar del Plata, we are a coastal city, so pollution in a way is taken away thanks to the wind. Today is a quite windy day, and to the sea. But I think about other cities such as Santiago de Chile, which is absolutely covered with pollution. And this is a great step forward for the industry. And I'm also thinking about regulation, as you say, for 2030 or 2035 about the banning of internal combustion cars in order to preserve our environment. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, and we hope that that we can now, from the point where we are, develop together with car manufacturers or with tier one suppliers this system to a stage where it really can be used in the cars and can go into mass production, because it's not, it's not the brake system is not really complicated. It's yeah, I would say pretty simple and combined out of common technologies, but in another way. We think that this at first could be really a helpful thing to bring down pollution in inner cities, as we have it here in Stuttgart, and as you said, maybe in Santiago. Or yeah.
So that's fantastic. And a question about, in a way, the price. You are moving from sometimes 4 braking systems, 2 in the front wheels, 2 in the rear wheels, into 1. Is that going to reduce the price of the car?
I don't think so. I don't think so. So always the question is about the price and as well about the weight. In terms of weight, we think we will be similar with a normal car, because you can remove the heavy brake calipers, you can remove the disc, and introduce it in another way. You add new brake discs, you need a new housing. The gearbox you need anyway. This is already in an electric car. And in terms of pricing, I think that the development will show it, because it's normally very strongly dependent on the quantity you make, and like the common brake technology with discs and pads is produced in millions and millions, and at first maybe it will be a bit more expensive, but as we have more pieces and more volume, price can come down and be hopefully as competitive as a normal braking system, with the advantage of being zero emission.
Yeah, what you are telling reminds me about the first mobile phones. Big and very expensive, and as it was producing, they became smaller, much more practical, and much cheaper.
Yeah, and that is where we are. I mean, as I said before, we were working with a research institute, so we are more or less completed the first research phase, and now we have to look together that's what I said, with suppliers and with manufacturers into the next stage of industrialization. And this is now the important thing, how to design it further, that we are able to produce this at a reasonable cost.
Well, Timo, I don't want to take more of your time. You are having most kind about this interview, and really you are showing us, I'm not saying the future, you are showing us the present.
Yeah, and hopefully as well a small contribution to the future of passenger cars. We are very proud of what we have done, and we're looking forward to develop it further. And it was a pleasure to speak to you and to introduce the system to your audience. And very happy if there are questions to continue this talks.
By sure, we are going to invite you again to our program. We call all our interviewers our chefs, because you bring us your best dishes in the world of the automobile. So today, you are Carta of the Carta chef, bringing this exquisite dish about pollution and brakes.
Okay, perfect. Then I hope I was bringing a nice taste to your show.
Only a question to round up. That's a question that we always ask at the very beginning, but we are keeping this for the last. What do you prefer to be, a diner or a cook?
A cook, because we like at HWA to create products and to think what we can put into a system that we generate the best thing for the customers.
Timo Kresse, really, thank you very, very much.
No problem. Welcome.